You're often described as the anti-Clarkson. How do you feel about that? Okay, well, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined today by Robert Llewellyn. Robert, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. No, great. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, you are and have been a jack of many trades: actor, writer, author, comedian. Some people know you best for Kryten in Red Dwarf, others for presenting Scrapheap Challenge. But now I think it's probably fair to say that you're best known for, or most people will know you for being the face and voice and founder of the fantastic FullyCharged Show. So we're really keen to talk about that journey, that 10-year journey. But to kick off, I'd like to ask you, given that your career has taken a somewhat eccentric path,
yes.
I'd like to begin by asking what you wanted to be when you grew up, and how you view what actually happened.
I mean, it is a big mystery. I think I was sort of certainly my parents pushed me into formal education, so I was quite a bright kid, I think, as a little primary school child, and I passed an exam called the 11 Plus, which I think was disbanded probably 30 years before you were born, which you took an exam at 11, you either went to a secondary modern school, this is in the United Kingdom, or a grammar school, and I passed it and went to a grammar school. And so they had this vision that I would be an Oxbridge student in a tweed jacket with leather elbow patches studying ancient Greek and philosophy or something. That didn't quite happen. That was a bit of a disappointment for them. And I didn't know, they told me those things, and it meant nothing to me. I think I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to build a giant steam engine, watermill, pumping station. I love big Victorian kind of steam engines and beam engines and weird things with brass pipes and valves and that hissed and burnt coal. I was fascinated in all that stuff.
They're a bit out of vogue at the moment.
Yes,
I think.
Slightly.
Yes,
slightly out of fashion. But I didn't really have a focused thing I wanted to do, but those were things I was interested in. I learnt to drive at the age of 11, I think, would have been 10 or 11 years old, in a go-kart that my elder brother he's now retired, automotive engineer his whole career, very skilled, and he can actually make stuff. I'm quite good at watching people make stuff and trying to understand how things work. But
did he make that go-kart and then you were the test pilot?
No, he drove it as well, but I had the advantage of being way smaller than him. He's way much bigger than me, he's much taller than I am. So at that age I was this tiny little scritty thing, so I'd sit in it and it was like it had nothing in it. It was driving on its own because I was so it went like stink when I was in it, and it was a bit slower because he was a much bigger, heavier lad. He would have been 14, something like that. And it was great fun, and we learned to learnt to drive after a fashion. I learnt how to skid round corners and spin cars out into the. So there were a lot of around where we lived in Northamptonshire, quite near Silverstone. There were a lot of disused airfields from World War II when I was a kid that hadn't been reclaimed. So there was lots of places like that where we could take a go-kart and thrash the hell out of it, and there's no one around. I mean, it's totally unregulated. And friend's driveway, I think we used a friend's driveway to a posh house, where they had a mile-long drive. So I did quite a lot of now looking back, scary driving at that age. You have no fear. You don't know, because you don't know what happens.
You're invincible.
Yeah, if you drive into that tree, and this go-kart would have maybe done 35, 40 miles an hour. So it wasn't like crazy, but you hit a tree at 35 miles an hour when you're 12 stuff. It wouldn't be good. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew was what I didn't want to do. So I had a very, very long list of things I didn't want to work in a bank like my dad, didn't want to join the army, didn't want to fight people, didn't want to be a racist. There was quite a long list of things. Sort of that kind of stuff. Had a girlfriend at school who was very ardent feminist. So then I realised I didn't want to be sexist, but I didn't quite know how to do that. So I managed to be sexist for many decades, but accidentally. And so all those things that were and what was happening culturally at that time was there was a kind of big movement amongst young people to reject straight society, as they would have described it. So the
straight-laced society,
straight-laced or established society, and build so instead of trying to change that, they were going, no man, it can't be changed, it will destroy itself, we'll create an alternative. So it was an alternative society. It was a different way of living. So that I found very appealing, and I lived in a commune. This was at the age of 16, 17 in Wales, on the Black Mountains in Wales, a place called Llanbachau, which was it wasn't well organised or politically motivated. It was basically a bunch of people who were slightly mad, and there was a lot of breeding going on, but I was luckily too young to get involved in the breeding. So that you'd see children and you'd go, I don't know you would look, there was loads of kids and lots of women, and they were happy hippies, and a pig used to come into the kitchen every morning and clean the floor, and like a big pig, not a little pig, a massive pig, would smash the door open, and it was friendly, and we'd always give it a scratch, and it would wander off outside again and luckily never did a poo in the house, because pig poo.
But were you all teenagers?
No, they were all older.
Okay.
They were older than me. Yeah, so I was definitely the youngest.
So it wasn't a ship without a rudder, so to speak.
It was, but it was older people. It was half well organised. So one of those guys, two of the guys there were engineering graduates from Oxford. They'd done engineering degrees. I don't know where, definitely, but there was an Oxford connection. That's how I met them, because I lived in Oxford before that. And they built a wind turbine on the hill behind this dilapidated but quite big old farmhouse. But this is a wooden tower with a wheel bearing from a transit van, and then an alternator from a big truck, and then the blades are made out of old bins, old sort of storage bins that we cut with, so I helped do that, really like Scrapheap. I mean, bizarrely similar. And because one of them had a bad back, so I would climb up this wooden tower, which was pretty precarious, but I didn't mind climbing things, and to oil it or to do something. It was terrible, but my little bedroom was at the back of the farmhouse with a little tiny dormer window that was the only window where you could see this wind turbine from the house, but you could also hear it. So I'd be in bed at night hearing this wretched thing was spinning around. It was terribly noisy, and if it was very windy, the bin the blades that made it turn would bend in and hit the tower, so then you go
and you'd get woken up and to go straight back up the tower,
and the next day we'd have to go out and bend all the bin lids back out again, But it did generate electricity that they stored in truck batteries on the kitchen floor.
Really?
Jesus, the danger of it. And there was little toddlers walking around with we eventually did put them in a box, I think, and that would run the lights in the house. So they were really low wattage. I don't know what the lights, but they knew how to do that. I wouldn't have known how to do any of that. They knew how to wire up a house. It had no lighting at all. It never had it. It was off the grid. It was a family had lived there up to about 4 years before we were there, with oil lamps since 1806. So it was a pretty wild, unreconstructed place. So it was very rough.
So you really went into the wilderness. I mean, that's a long trajectory away from
parental stamp of approval.
No, they would not. My parents would have freaked out. I mean, they didn't ever come visit me there. They did visit me, and I did fall out with them, but I made up with them. So they forgave me in the long run.
So how did you leave this paradise?
It just got too much. I just needed a bath.
The career opportunities of being more than a blade technician were.
Yeah, and I was so poor, and some of them were really profoundly mad. I mean, they really were bonkers. There was slightly too much, very, I'm sure, organic and ethically produced marijuana being consumed, and that bored me. I was never a very good hippie. I wasn't very good. I could do the hair and the clothes, but I couldn't do the stuff. I was so bored. People being stoned, just and I'm going, oh Christ. Whereas those two engineer dudes, I love them because they were mad. They had insane hair. They were crazy, but they made stuff. And they were always out the back fixing the van or the Land Rover that we all used. So there was elements of it that I loved. No one had their own money. You had to put all the money you earned into a pot, and that was used to feed everybody. And so you often just wander in. I'd be chopping wood. I'd wander in, and there was a meal. It was cooked because it was someone else.
But the pig was never going to be eaten at any point.
We never had the pig belonged to the farmer. The farmer who had lived in this farmhouse lived in a beautiful centrally heated brick ugly bungalow just up the road, nice and warm and dry.
Because the first person to worry about the purse strings. It'd be dear old pig, I think.
Yeah. Yes, the pig. I think we were all vegetarian. I can't even remember. Because that was later that I made myself kill animals because I thought it wasn't right to eat meat without knowing how you produce it. That was an ethical decision on my part. I mean, when I say animals, I have chickens, ducks and rabbits. That's all I've ever killed. I haven't killed a pig or a cow or a sheep. That would be quite challenging.
Where does the killing fit into the story?
I don't know. No, it doesn't. It was just a thing I did when I was still a hippie. I'm just remembering how life changed when I cut my hair off. Then I became different. But so when I had long hair, I also had a shotgun and a bow and arrow, which may sound peculiar, but I lived out in the sticks, so I was kind of a wild man.
This just shows you no amount of interview prep will ever prepare you for an interview. I never thought I'd be talking to you about bow hunting, and
I was pretty rubbish with the bow and arrow, but I was quite good with the shotgun. But that's a little bit easier for rabbits.
Yeah,
I didn't do. And I mean, this is minimal. This is very minimal. I found it very disturbing and distressing to take an animal's life and then skin it and gut it and cook it. It wasn't like nothing. I didn't just shrug it off. It freaked me out.
Yeah.
But I thought I had to do it because I was eating meat, and I thought, well, I can't eat meat and go. Which is, I always think, this has always been my ambition in my life. that was an early ambition, was to introduce a meat license, so that when you're 17, 19, and you want to eat meat, you go to a special place, government-run, clean, tidy slaughterhouse, and you put on all the right kit. You've got specialist people who help you, and then they bring a cow in, and you just have to kill the cow properly, like you do in a slaughterhouse, and then gut it and hang it up and cut the meat off. And then once you've done that, you pass your test like a driving license. You've got a license, you can eat meat. And the meat-eating population in this country would be 5%.
Yes.
Because it's so removed from our lives. Where even in my father's generation, it wasn't. You would be on a farm and you'd see the pig being killed, or you'd kill the chickens, and
you'd know its name.
You'd know its name. Well, they probably didn't name them, I think, but
But I think you're absolutely right. It's so funny hearing these ideas reborn. I guess we're sort of facing the same things. I mean, and maybe there's different means of acting on them now, but I think young people have always had a desire to move the needle towards a sort of more moralistic,
slightly more absolutely
idealistic,
and it really depends then whether and I think that's the journey I've been on, is that the easy route, and I've witnessed it in some people. It's not actually that many of my peers, but of my generation, say people who are now in their 60s, but were radical, extreme, vegans, vegetarians, feminists, gay men, will eventually become a bit more conservative, and that's the theory, and actually, I think if anything, I've gone the other way, that I don't feel like that anymore. I don't feel like, young people should just buckle down and get a job, and no, tear the place to bits. It's much more important that your generation goes, no, this is wrong.
Is that do you think that's in part because of the platform that you now have? It feels like you ought to have strong opinions.
Well, it's possible. I don't know quite what motivates it, but I don't. When I meet people who, when I say the word conservative, I actually don't anything to do with, in a sense, politics or the Conservative Party, but they're sort of, they kind of rake it all in and want to keep their bit. I'm just going, no, just don't worry about it, because it makes you ill. That's what you realise as you're older. It's not good for you. It's much better if you're a bit more relaxed about it. And and also you also have to accept massive levels of hypocrisy. That's what the theory. And then in practice, I owned 2 properties and 2 cars, and I'm a fucking baby booming arsehole. So, and then you go, well, do I give it? I don't really want to just give it away. Can I live there for a bit longer? We're all going. I mean, the thing is, I think in 10 years' time we'll all be dead, and the property market will collapse because all the posh houses will be. Fucking, who's going to buy them? I don't know. Russians in London.
It seems to be an existence that's reliant now on both partners contributing to the up to the eyeballs mortgage. Most girls I know in their early 30s having kids now are so adamant that they need to get back into work to keep up the financial repayments on the property. So nobody gets to step away from the coal furnace even for a second. But it is nice to hear about times where things were a little different, and you can enjoy it for the sake of, presumably, what it sounds like you enjoyed life's experiences.
Yes, very much so. I mean, and it was such a the housing in particular for young people then in that period. So we're talking 73 to 1980. That was the period of time that I was sort of living out sort of slightly outside normal society. But there was squatting, which is a hard thing to understand now, but most of Notting Hill, for instance, was squat. The big posh houses that George Osborne lives in now were commune squats with big posters outside and pictures of Che Guevara in the window and Janis Joplin and rock and roll music and dope parties and free food kitchens were in those really flash joints in Notting Hill. Notting Hill was totally different.
But had you come to London, to try and find the streets paved with gold?
No.
What was the move?
I was making shoes. So I became it's so embarrassing going over this old rubbish. But I was a hippie leather worker. So after I lived in the commune, I met a man who made leather bags, and we went to festivals in the summer and sold leather bags and belts with Celtic runes emblazoned on them and studs and kind of embarrassing. And I think I must have been quite a snotty, ethical little tosser, because I went, this is ridiculous. This is bourgeois frippery. This isn't useful. I want to make something useful. Yeah. And so I then was in London buying weird studs and buckles for weird hippie belts, and I saw this old bloke in a basement just off Tottenham Court Road making shoes. I'd never occurred to me. I'd never seen anything like it. And I went down. He was a Greek Cypriot guy, lovely man. And while I was there talking to him, he was really generous with his time, and he was showing me the shoes. And this was just like on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't anything. I hadn't got an appointment. It was just a fluke thing. His boss, the guy who ran the shoe shop, came down. They were looking for an apprentice, and I went, oh. And he said, well, come on. And he was very posh English. Why didn't you come along and be an apprentice with us? Oh, all right. So that's what I did. And that shop is still there, James Taylor's it's called, just off Marylebone High Street. Wow. And they're bespoke shoemakers. So I learnt to make shoes with really old men, old Jewish guys who were in the camps. So I was taught by a guy who had a number tattooed on his arm. Wow. He was in a concentration camp, and because he was a shoemaker, often the shoemakers and tailors would survive because they would mend the clothes or make clothes for the guards or make their boots. This guy repaired jack boots for...
Would he be making, when you go to the museums and you see the rows and rows of shoes, would he have been responsible for making some of the inmate shoes? Or?
Possibly. I mean, he was a shoemaker in Prague. That's where he came from. So he was a Czech Jew, and then his buddy was a German communist who was also put in a camp, who also had that, because I assumed he was Jewish as well. He wasn't. Wow. He was German, but he wasn't. He was. All his family were killed. I mean, it's horrendous stories. Yeah. And that generation is kind of gone now because they were adults during the war, in that. But their stories of that were amazing. But they taught me to make shoes. So they made incredibly beautiful. They were very sort of high-end, posh shoes, like Prince Charles would get from John Lobb. So I also, which is another shoemaking company. So I also worked for them later on. Most of the people who were making the shoes then were in their late 50s, 60s, and were about to retire. So all those companies were desperate to get some young blood in to make, otherwise they weren't going to have any. They had the orders, people wanted the shoes, they had no one to make them, So.
And then you let them down by going off to start writing.
Well, then I did that for I don't know how long, maybe 5 years. Set up my own company with a friend that we made shoes for. We were out workers for them, but we also made shoes for our own clients.
And Celtic runes.
No, by then they were brogues for bankers. We went from Celtic runes to bankers brogues. So really posh, because these shoes, even then, so we're talking like 1979, 80. 250 quid for a pair of shoes. Then was like £1,000 now. They were very expensive, made to measure. I mean, they were beautiful, and I was never that technically good at them. There were some parts of it I was good at, but the guy that I worked with, my partner in the business we set up, was genius. Sort of world standard, brilliant finish that he would have. They would glow like they were made of, a pair of black shoes looked like it was made of black glass. They glowed that much. They were so crisp.
But did you just have to have this exceptional attention span? Because I was reading about Benedict Cumberbatch being into watchmaking the other day, and you seem to need this really detailed focus.
I think it was good for me in that sense, because I didn't have that. I think when I started, and it just, if you didn't develop that, you couldn't do it. So it became a thing where you could sit down for 5 hours cutting the edge of a sole to make it just fit the those sort of attentions to detail and sewing them, and they're really hard. It's really physically hard work. It's not like watchmaking, because that is very fine, delicate work. This is, you're sometimes smashing something with a hammer, putting pegs in to hold a heel on. It's not all delicate work.
I mean, at this point, you could have killed your own animals, skinned them, made your own leather, and then created your own shoes.
So that was why, because I was using leather. That was where the killing animals came from. Right. I thought, I can't use leather. I was a vegetarian, and I was cutting up leather. I went, oh, hang on, there's something wrong here. This doesn't work. I was a vegetarian out of love, because I was in love with the vegan, and I couldn't ever quite go. I tried to be vegan.
But then in honouring the process of making a really decent pair of shoes, you at least turn the end product into something that's truly treasured.
You're hopefully not wasting it. Yes, I mean, and it is something I would love to have. It would have been an area I might have gone down in another life. Was that, like now, for instance, you could have a shoe shop where you walk in and you put your stocking foot in a box, and it measures it, and it prints you a last 3D printing last, which would fit your individual foot so well. The difference between putting a pair of shoes on that you buy in a shop and a pair of shoes that are made for you is mind-boggling, because you don't believe you've got shoes on. You think that you've got nothing on your feet, and yet you've got a heel that makes a noise. They fit so, if they're done right. And that skill is the most complex bit of shoemaking, is making that last, which is the last is the mould that you make the shoe on. And we use wooden ones. They're often plastic now, but and that wooden shape, which is basically the shape of the inside of your shoe, to make that, to measure, to fit someone, is incredible skill. I mean, it's just mine, because I've done it, got it wrong, and you have really unhappy people.
Do you still sort of love it now?
I would. I mean, it's a side. There's a sort of dead side to me that I could go back to it. It would take me so long, and I would rip my hands to pieces. So my hands were sort of SAS dangerous. I had incredibly strong hands and incredibly weak arms. The rest of me, but my hands could, crush the front of a tank, because you're gripping and you're using your hands all the time. So the muscles in your hands really well developed, but it kind of faded past my wrists. But it was quite weird how strong your hands were. But that now would be brutal. I'd find that really hard, I think.
And then, so how you then had to use these hands for writing?
Well, yeah. So then, that was the other thing. I think. When you said, what did you want to be? I never knew, but I knew I wanted to write. Okay. I just didn't know what I wanted to write or how you do it. So I wrote a novel when I was probably 12 that was like a Sherlock Holmes thing, it was a detective story, and I loved doing it. And it wasn't. And when you're that age, I was 12 or 13. You write an essay for school, and it's probably 500 words. I wrote like 70 pages in a book of handwritten story, and I loved the kind of how much there was. That was part of the excitement. The fact that it was a rubbish story with no ending and no plot, and it was irrelevant then. But that was something I always wanted to do. Definitely wanted to write. Didn't know how you do it. But then it was, I suppose it was it's that weird combination of things. So late 70s, early 80s, I went to a club in Baker Street and saw a really funny man stand up in front of people and make them laugh, and he just said funny stuff. I'd never seen anything like it. And also because he did a sort of hippie character, and his name's Nigel Planer. He's still a friend of mine who was in The Young Ones, so I don't know if you ever saw The Young Ones. It's a sitcom called The Young Ones. Google it, because it's very funny. But he played a hippie in it, Neil, and he's like really depressed. I've just cooked some lentils. Does anybody want any? He was always cooking lentils, and always getting beaten up by the punks who hated the hippie. And so Nigel and I became friends, and then it was sort of through that, and then a kind of charity events in workshops that I worked in, when I was making shoes, where they said, can you present the things or something, and I don't know, I've never been on stage, never been in a school play, never wanted to be an actor, didn't want to do any of that, but went on, and sort of people didn't boo and throw things. So out of that I met some people who were performers. This is over a period of years, not like in 2 weeks, and I wrote them a sketch that they did. I didn't even see them do it, and people laughed, and they said, oh no, it went down really, can you do another one? I went, oh, I can write stuff like for the man who stands at, because he wrote that. That's why I've learned, he writes it down and then he says it, and then people laugh. And it's such a weird way of working that out. There was no now there's a whole industry around that, and you might know that you go to the BBC and you give them scripts. I hadn't got a clue. It's a total mystery. So I wrote more stuff for those guys, and they said, "Can you do it as well?" There was one sketch about the RAF, about my father, who was a pilot in the war. But it was a sort of spoof of that, and being pissed and stoned and going out to get a kebab after the bombing raid. So they were trying to find the kebab shop, but they were in a Lancaster bomber. And that, I can't really describe the whole thing. And it was all about homophobia as well, because one of the characters was very homophobic, but the co-pilot was gay, and he was sick and tired of being oppressed. It was just, people laughed, I'll just say that. And so I performed that one night in a pub called the Crown and Castle in Dalston Junction in East London. I went on stage so desperate to find a way of getting out of it. Didn't want to do it, didn't want to be there, felt sick. Thought, this is a stupid waste of time, I should be working. This is fucking stupid. I hated myself. But thankfully, or whatever, that night, for some reason, it was a really big crowd. The room was packed. They laughed, and they laughed at things I said, which completely threw me, when I'd never experienced that before. And I'd say the line that we'd rehearsed in Bernie's bedroom. So it'd never been out in public, and I'd go, da-da-da-da-da, oh, and I was like that all the way. Apparently my friends who were in the audience said, you ruined the performance, because every time it got a laugh, you stood and looked at everybody and going, is that funny then? So really not a slick performance. The other two guys, very seasoned performers, have been doing it for years, so I was carried by them. And that, I think, if that night had been a bit of a damp squid, or people go, "Oh no, it's good, bye," I'd never have done it again. People went insane, just screaming and clapping and standing ovation at the end, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. But it was the lift you got from it, that experience. I'd never had anything like it before in my life, and that was a turning point, game changer-y thing.
Yeah, well, sometimes the signs just lay themselves out there for you, and if you don't follow them, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right,
so that was weird, and then so I was still making shoes then, and within 6 months I was a full-time performer, I suppose, if you can call it that, with a little group that we formed, 4 people, so 3 performers and a musician. So we worked the alternative comedy circuit, which was exploding at the time, which is where a lot of the people, Dawn French, Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders, Dawn would be happy that you
French and Saunders.
So we did shows with them, Ben Elton, Rick Mayall, Ade Edmondson, all the young ones. All that crowd were of our generation, and that's and loads. All sorts of people. Jack D. I remember meeting Jack D. Who does, what does he do now? I'm sorry, I haven't a clue. He does radio stuff that you wouldn't listen to on Radio 4. It's Jack D on the radio, that's nice, I listened to that. But so a lot of those comedians that are now on panel shows, the bald old ones on panel shows, that's when we started out with them.
They do form these nice circuits, because I guess the level below that you've got the guys from Peep Show and stuff like that, but it's sort of hands off, and obviously the Stephen Fry and that brigade. I remember it well, Rick Mayall and everybody, and yourself as well, around that era, because my parents would be watching these shows, and I was a young kid watching what they wanted to watch in the evening. So
because the first time we did the Edinburgh Festival was when Emma Thompson, Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie won the Perrier Award, which we didn't even know there was an award. It was the first year it happened. We never won the Perrier Award. I got nominated for it, but I never won it.
Because that was your lead in, weren't you? I read that you were doing was it a one-man show as a robot? In Edinburgh Fringe?
It was kind of 10 years later, but yes.
Oh, sorry, okay, wow.
Because we first went to Edinburgh, I can't remember, 1980, 81. So 88, so not 10 years, but a bit later, 88, I wrote a play called Mammon, Robot Born of Woman, which was inspired by RoboCop, but instead of building a robot that is good at killing people, this is a robot that was good at making money, because it was at the height of the sort of the financial explosion in the city, and there were yuppies, that was the common term. So he was a robo-yuppie.
I think you're 30 years ahead of your time. I think everybody's fixated with making robots to build money at the moment.
Yes. Well, exactly. But the story, because it was a good friend of mine that I worked with a lot, a woman called Deborah John Wilson, who's an American actress. a black woman, and so it was the idea that a black woman couldn't trade on the stock market because of racism and stupidity, and she's a woman and she's black, so she makes a white male robot to go in and trade for her, and she's really good at trading, so she's controlling him. But then she uploads Lost Mode. So it's very similar. There's a lot of pre-Kryten stuff, Lost Mode, and then which was a cheap gag, but it got a big laugh, was that he would have involuntary copulatory movements, and he'd shag a desk right across the stage.
And you performed those?
I was performing with vigour. It was cheap and shallow.
And that's how you got into Red Dwarf?
Effectively, yes, because the producer of Red Dwarf at the time saw the show, and what was great, a guy I knew, a guy called Paul Jackson, amazing producer, TV producer, and he wanted to come in and see it, and I said, I'm really sorry, it's full, it's sold out, which is a really good thing. I didn't realise at the time, I wasn't doing it as a cool thing. I went, fuck, how am I going to get Paul in? So eventually we put a seat on the side of the stage just behind the curtain at the edge, and that's where he saw it from, because you couldn't get a seat. We were in a small theatre, to put it in context. It's only about 150 people. So,
do you think the nature of the Fringe has changed a bit? I mean, I went there in 2010. We did a little show off the university, and it didn't necessarily feel like it was going to be the place that many people were going to be discovered, whereas I feel like maybe 20 years before it just had a bit more of a, I don't know, raw feel to it.
It's really hard to know, because for instance, by the time I did that show, I already had a kind of a track record in Edinburgh for successful shows with other people. So I'd been in the group that we started right back in the late 70s. We'd done massive shows, we'd done long runs in big theatres with 2,000 people sold out every night. So there was that.
So it sounds almost like it happened by chance, but actually it was the tidal force.
And that was a combination of going there year after year, so it wasn't like overnight. But that said, the first year we went ever, we had a poster, which a friend of ours had screen printed. So we didn't have 500 posters, we had one which we would put outside the venue and hope no one would steal, and then we'd take it down after the gig, and we had nothing, no money, no publicity. And our golden rule, there's 4 of us, is we would never perform if there was the same number of people in the audience or less. If there was 4 people or less, we wouldn't do the show. We'd just give them the money back and say goodnight. And the first night we were on at the Edinburgh Festival, there were 4 people in the audience. We looked through the little curtain and went, no. All these chairs we put out, no one. 4 people, and then one more guy came in and sat behind them. We went, that's 5, we got to. Did the show, and it was agony. And they laughed, they were very sweet, but when you've only got 5 people, even if they think it's really funny, they go, because they're embarrassed. And so we got away with it. The next night, 50 people. The third night, sold out. People couldn't get a ticket, and that was. I don't think that would happen now.
All right.
That was to put that show in context. It was a show we'd been doing a long time, so it wasn't like a tryout first night student thing where you try and will it work. We knew it worked. We'd done it in front of hundreds of audiences before, so we had that advantage, of being very confident with the material and the structure of it. But for it to go that crazy that quickly, I don't know if that can happen, because there was no. We hadn't had a review. It's word of mouth, pure word of mouth, which is an extraordinary thing to witness on that kind of little micro level. That there was then queues for returns to try and get in and see it, which is extraordinary. So, and we still lost money. Because the rent, we had to rent a flat and we had to rent the apartment, and then I think we might have paid for another 3 or 4 posters. We went crazy with money. But we were still. I don't know how we survived. I don't know how we ate food. I don't know how we. It's a mystery now. I can't imagine. We had nothing at all.
So fun to just keep at it, and so the producer of Red Dwarf was not put out by being put sort of to the shuffle to the side and the curtain. He came straight up to you afterwards, and
he talked about I think at the original conversation he said come and meet the writers of Red Dwarf, which I'd heard of and I'd seen one episode, but I hadn't really watched it. And I knew Norman Lovett, who plays a character Holly. He plays a computer, and he's even older than me. He's actually older than me, and so I knew Norman. So he's the only one. And I'd seen a bit of it, and I saw Norman doing it. I went, and I've kind of said no. I'm a bit busy because that show was commissioned by Channel 4 to be a Channel 4 series. I had my own work. I couldn't be doing other people's. Of course, the commission never came off. It was a total disaster. And I just always wanted to go back to myself at that time now and just slap myself around the face and go, shut up and say yes. Do not blow this. Because you couldn't imagine how unlikely it was in 1988 to be said, do you want to do this sitcom, and still be doing it in 2020. You know, I've only just finished filming a new lot of Red Dwarf. And
did you expect this most recent film to come through though?
Oh well, we kind of knew it was brewing, but so you know, in the last few years we've kind of been aware that there's more coming.
So what was the hiatus between season 12 and
it was 9 years, I think, a long time. So it was, for a long time, it was the show I used to do, and I wouldn't really talk about it. It was that thing I used to do, but then it came back, and people liked it, and it was like,
it's so iconic.
It's so weird.
When's that coming out?
Easter, I think. We're going to see it. We haven't seen it yet. It's always a surprise when you see it. Well, it looks very different when they finish with all the special effects.
I imagine you'll look almost identical because they'll have you covered in prosthetics again, so you could be...
I look...
You might have to tell us.
Well, no, I do look very recognisably Kryten, but I think he looks a little bit older, a lot more portly, and a little bit slower in his movements. And he generally needs 3 points of contact in any part of any spaceship in case he falls over. So I had a few quite disastrous falls because I didn't notice bits of set. So I'd be running along the corridor, and you just hear, because when you go down in that costume, you go down hard. I just didn't see things. So
but I think it remains a good formula. I was watching some clips of Red Dwarf the other day, and it was one where Craig Charles' character is going to need to lie, or getting Kryten to start telling lies, and those kinds of things are just funny because you're offsetting it onto a character where you can project bigotry, anything, because it's a robot, which gives you a lot of freedom to have.
And the fact that he's a character that admires the ability to lie, cheat, steal. He thinks he's brilliant. He can't do it. You know?
It reminds me actually that Futurama almost copied that with Bender.
Yes,
it was a very similar.
Because I wasn't aware of that, but people said, "Oh, look at this," and I'll go, "Oh my God, that's almost word for word like a Kryten scene."
Yeah,
which is that stuff happens, doesn't it? I don't even know if they really.
Was Kryten similar to the character you'd cooked up at Edinburgh Fringe, or did you completely know?
No. So the only thing that was, which I'd forgotten about, but there was one, because you couldn't record stuff. So a friend of ours who taught at film school, basically a camera operator, and she came to Edinburgh with a video camera, which is now, when we heard that, we went, oh my God, a video camera, it was like
the size of the room.
Well, no, it was quite small, but it used a terrible format. So it used a little video cassette.
Yeah, I remember that.
That you then clip inside a VHS tape, and then you could play it on a VHS tape. It was a shite, but the audio was pretty bad. But you could just about hear it, and I'd forgotten that the inner voice of Mammon. So the things that said, engage lie mode, that was in that kind of voice, and I don't know why or where that came from. Slightly different, but it was a sort of bland American, very much inspired by 2001. Dave, are you feeling okay, Dave? It's that kind of. That was what I was trying to find. It was meant to be Canadian. I cannot tell you how embarrassing it is to be at a science fiction convention in Vancouver with a lot of Canadians telling you that's not Canadian, eh? No, I'd had a fling with a Canadian the year just before I started Red Dwarf, so that's so funny.
We mustn't forget to talk about Fully Charged.
Oh yeah.
No. So to advance the story along a bit, so Red Dwarf, and then Scrapheap Challenge. And then how do we get into YouTube? Because YouTube, Fully Charged is 10 years old. I think, this year. YouTube is only 15 years old.
Yeah, and I did a series on YouTube before that. So I'll do it as quickly as I can because I know I'll waffle on. So in about 2000, I went to a conference in Los Angeles about internet broadcasting. I think they called it internet narrowcasting, just to be clever. Podcasting, and it was a conference about podcasting and video on the internet, which at the time was just close to impossible. I mean, it was just barely possible. You could have a tiny little shrunk down, crushed video feed that you could watch on your dial-up modem. It was really just not really happening, but you could tell. I really got a sense at that conference that it could happen. And I saw a wonderful display of Final Cut Pro. It must have been around the time Apple launched Final Cut Pro, where there's the really confident geek behind the table with all the stuff, and there's a big screen, and he goes, so if you want to drop something in your timeline, you just do that, and the whole thing froze, and there was a spinning ball of doom, and nothing there to unplug, just like unplug everything, so pushing that technology was being pushed to the absolute limit that you could do that stuff, but you could sense, because at that stage I had offline edited sitcoms that I'd shot for Channel 4 in the mid-80s. We did one, and that was VHS tapes. So you'd be transferring footage from one VHS tape machine to another. It was so crude and so time-consuming, but there wasn't anything else, so I thought it was really cool, cutting-edge stuff. And you could see, once this is all on a computer and you can just move the file over and you can do that with it, but that was 2000, so it took a long time.
Yeah.
But I became sort of fascinated with the possibilities. So it was partly that, it was partly the camera crew and the camera engineers on Scrapheap, because Scrapheap was such a big production, had so many cameras. They had like a camera engineer to maintain everything, to make sure all the sound communication worked, that they were getting the pictures sent back to the mixing desk so that the person there could say, get a shot of the gearbox exploding or whatever it was. There was quite a lot of more technology than you'd have if you were shooting a documentary or a sitcom. So those guys were obsessed with kit. And we used little things they used to call suicide cameras, so that like a lipstick that size, but with a wire out the back, and it went into a box, and you could strap that to a machine to film the driver when it was going over the sand dunes or in the water or whatever. And if it got bust up, they weren't that expensive, so they didn't mind. So I bought 2 of those cameras at the end of Scrapheap for like nothing, for 50 quid from them, and they were rubbish. And I found little mounts that I went to a camera mount shop, and you had these little suckers that you put on the windscreen, because I thought I was just shooting a car, because then you've got stuff going on outside and you can talk while you're driving. So I did this series called Carpool, where I gave people lifts. That was all it was, and people watched it, and that was initially on iTunes. It wasn't even on YouTube, because they were like 20 minutes long, and you couldn't put anything more than I think 4 or 5 minutes on YouTube at that time. And then it's that weird thing how that happened. Someone from YouTube who was a Red Dwarf fan got in touch with me. It was that way around, and said, "Come in, let's talk."
That's awesome.
My God. So I went in. And he went. I said, "I'd love to put it on YouTube, but I can only put on 5 minutes." He went, Now you can put however long you want. He did something on my account which meant I could put 4 hours on, But then I launched Carpool, and it worked really well. And then it was that interesting journey where it then got commissioned as a regular TV show on Dave. And
is this like a precursor to James Corden's Carpool? I mean, is they still
it's very hard to say that James would have copied
something.
I'm sure America as well.
He seems to have done extraordinarily
inspired, I think.
There's also, and he was really nice about it, Jerry Seinfeld doing Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, which is essentially what I was doing, but because it was mainly comedians that I got in the car. But it's, other people had put cameras in cars before I did. You can't really, I've always said it's not that, but he sent a little apology. Sorry dudes, not heard of Carpool, in a tweet to me. So I thought, well, that's fair enough. James Corden hasn't done that. I actually saw him at a Jaguar event in Los Angeles, and he was being ushered out. I was just standing on my own with a canapé, and he was being ushered out by his people, and he went, he did a sort of look, didn't say anything, and I went, I've never met him before, someone I know, but I think there was some
acknowledgement.
I like to think it was a guilt spasm, but I don't think he does guilt. Also, have you seen the footage of how they film that? He's not driving, it's on a trailer. The car's on a really weird looking trailer.
I always suspected with the value of the celebrities in the car that driving it might be foolish.
I think but everyone went, it's disgraceful, he doesn't even drive. And I went, fair enough, mate. If I was driving Beyonce, I had Stephen Fry
and her face hits the dashboard at 30 miles an hour.
That was so I've got to go back very briefly to why this happened. So I had an argument with my car insurance in their office. I said, I know other people who are my age, I've got no claims, blah blah blah, it's a not expensive car, why am I paying so much? It's because you're an actor. What, are actors bad drivers? No, actually actors have got a very good reputation as drivers, but you might give someone famous a lift. I said, I never gave anyone famous. Oh. Then I went, Eddie Izzard. I gave him one. Ruby Wax, who he doesn't know who you are, Ruby, in case you ever hear this.
I will know after
You will know now. It's very funny. She's lovely. And I can't remember who else. But there was like 3 people who you could, at the time, you could have said were famous. And that reason is if I don't even have a bad accident, but they bash their head on the thing and they're in the middle of doing a series and they've got a bruise or a cut, the production company can sue me and my insurance.
If Brian Blessed loses his beard or something.
Yeah. So then I thought, well, I'm paying for it. I may as well have some famous people in the car. So then that was a motivating.
So they pulled you into Dave, and then it.
Yeah, and I did it, and it was fine. But they were very prescriptive of who I could have.
And the subject matter you had to talk about.
And it was all comedians, which is fine. No, not what to talk about, but it was all comedians that are on Dave regularly, and they were all great. It wasn't like the actual shows. I just went because I had brain surgeons, I had neuroscientists, engineers, as well as celebs. I always wanted to get a bit of nuclear science, all sorts of interest. Brian Cox before he was a big telly star, because it was fascinating to hear the density of liquid something or other on the planet's surface. Most of that one I just there's a wonderful magician, I've got to remember his name, I know I've started, Paul Daniels, who passed away a couple of years ago. Really funny. You heard
he was his assistant and they saw in half Debbie.
Yeah, Debbie, who's lovely, and she made me a cup of tea in the kitchen. She was lovely. But he did, that's one time I nearly crashed because it was such a shock. He did, and he was sort of retired by that time, and he did a card trick as I was driving, and I had to pick a card like this, pick a card, and you go, look at the card, all right, put it in your, put it back in, don't worry about it. And so I'm like that, going, and then I saw on camera, he does all this shuffling stuff, and then he goes, is this the card? And he lifts it out of his pocket, and it wasn't. I think I'd chosen the 8 of clubs, say, and he lifted it up and he's like, 2 of clubs. Oh, poor old guy. He was retired. I felt quite sad for him. Can't do the magic anymore. And then he pulled it up again, and the card kept getting longer and longer until there were 8 clubs on it.
That's awesome.
And how the fuck he did it? But it was so good when it was it was perfect moment in a car when you're driving, and I kept going, because it kept getting longer and longer and longer.
Like your insurance.
It was basically a playing card that was like a foot long. That was he was great. So that kind of really, it kind of made me depressed. It wasn't because the channel were bad or anything, it was just that's like property. It became like a job, and that was definitely a turning point. I went, I don't want to do that. What I love doing is this completely anarchic thing, and I had the advantage, and it's unfair for other people trying to do the same thing, where I'm earning my living somewhere else. So carpool only ever cost me money. I never made, I suppose at the end of doing the Dave series I made a bit, but it was still peanuts. So then I started, but then through all that stuff, I'd come into contact with engineers through Scrapheap who were doing electric drivetrains, who were doing battery management systems, who were explaining how lithium-ion batteries that could be recharged could be used in vehicles and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff was in the background. I was interested in that, and so 2010 was when I thought, I'll try this. I'll just do a pilot and see if anybody watches it and put it on. And kind of few people. It wasn't big numbers or anything, but it kind of the car companies noticed. That was interesting because they know they've got to change. They know they've got to completely transform the whole way they operate, and they don't know how to do it, and they still don't know how to do it 10 years later, but they're desperate for any help. So it was almost like they kind of went, oh, can you do something about this Mitsubishi, whatever, It was really interesting. So it grew partly by the access I was given into those companies. So early Hondas and
so the early genesis of the production was that, as you say, to convert cars into electric.
No, it was manufacturers that were making electric cars. So I knew that Nissan were bringing out the Nissan Leaf probably 2 years before it was launched, so in probably 2009. So I was driving mule cars, which is where they make the drivetrain. Gotcha. So they put a different body on it, and you drive that, and literally I drove that around a car park, not on the road. It wasn't road legal, it was a sort of a car. And then there was the Tesla people,
because they took a Lotus, didn't they, or something?
Yeah, that was a converted Lotus, the Roadster. So that was the first car that I filmed in for Fully Charged, but that was commercially available by then, and that would do around 200 miles on a charger, which was amazing at the time. Everyone went, an electric car that does 200 miles was just incredible. There's nowhere to charge it. That's the thing, other than your house and a 3-pin plug, which would take 2 days to charge that car. And that was.
Was it called Fully Charged from the start?
It was called Gearless.
Gearless, okay.
Yeah, for about an episode. Because I thought electric cars don't have gears, at which point I found all these electric cars that had gears. Because I thought instead of Top Gear, or no, I was going to be no gears, and then Gearless, and I'm glad I don't know where Fully Charged came from, it just sort of appeared out of.
And so you started because you wanted to have autonomy over the production. Did you think back then, and with this answer you can explain exactly where Fully Charged is now to people who don't know, did you think back then that it would become, was it just a passion project? Did you think it would become this commercial opportunity? Because it's a business now.
I definitely didn't think it would be a business opportunity. I thought, in fact, so many times I did stop doing it because I couldn't afford it. Didn't have time. I had other jobs to do. I was doing other things. So that if you look at the kind of release dates from the first episode, they're very sporadic to start with. They're not every week or anything like that. So it was around about 20, I suppose when it would have been 16, 15, 16, since 2016, so for the last 4 years it's been either 1 or 2 episodes a week pretty consistently throughout the year, which is a big lot of stuff. That's a lot of production to maintain that, and that required money. So the two main sources of income which we get now still is AdSense from the adverts on YouTube, which in 2016 would have been literally £112 a month or £96, very low because there's not that many views, so very small amounts of money. Now it's enough to pay the rent on the office and for one editor, but it's nowhere near enough to pay for the whole thing. So you've got to be in the sort of Marcus Brownlee territory where you've got 23 million subscribers and 14 million views a day.
You're not doing too badly.
We're doing all right. We're doing between 2 and 3 million views a month. That's our average, which is good.
With about 600,000 subscribers.
Just over 600,000 subscribers. So but it's been really you can really call that organic growth. It hasn't been spectacular explosions. It's been this constant steady. So we add about between 3,000 and 5,000 subscribers a week. New subscribers a week.
That's great.
Which is amazing.
Because if you think about it, some TV channels would be envious of having that viewership, right? And that's what's so interesting about YouTube is you come pre-packaged with 600,000 people hooked on your content, which is
that side of it is extraordinary. And I think the thing that I've really only been really aware of the last sort of 18 months is where people live. So it's about 24% of our audience are in the UK, which means the vast majority are outside the UK. The biggest single block is the United States.
Amazing.
But Netherlands is huge, Germany is huge, Australia, New Zealand. I mean, Netherlands and Germany, I think it's fascinating because it's an English language show and we don't put subtitles on, although I think a lovely German man did on 1 or 2,
cool.
But it's a lot of work. And we don't make any effort to do that. But of course, Dutch people speak better English than we do. So
it's so true.
Yeah, and Germans as well. So there's that side of it, which is fascinating, and we've just experienced that with a live show in Texas, in Austin, Texas, a couple of weeks ago, which was a big success. So anyway, there's that side. The other one was. And this is again through a kind of personal contact. There was someone I knew from working on Scrapheap in America. I met a lot of people there in both sort of start-up internet TV and engineering. It's a weird combination. So people who were working at the early people who worked at Tesla, who developed electric motorbikes in San Francisco, and electric pedal bikes. So the pedal assist bike, mountain biking was this huge explosion in California. So I was kind of aware of all that, and then other people who were in sort of start-up territory who I went to a party, I think it was 2005 when we were shooting Scrapheap in America, and I went with even then, because 2005 was quite a while ago, I still felt 30 years too old to be at the party. They were all about your age or younger, and that was the launch of Twitter. But I didn't know that till about a launch party for Twitter. I didn't know that till at least 2 years later. So someone said, "What's your Twitter handle?" And I cannot tell you how naff and rubbish that sounded then, because it just sounded, what the hell are these people with their fucking laptops? Twitter. I mean, Twitter. Fuck off. No, it sounded shit. And there was these little messages going, "Hey dudes, how y'all hanging?" Like going up on a big screen. Like, who fucking cares? You know, it just sounded so shit. But one of the people I was with, created a Twitter account for me, and my comedy joke name on the production was Bobby Lou, because they couldn't say Llewellyn, so it was Robert and Llewellyn. They shortened it to Bobby Lou because my co-presenter was Bobby Sue, and I'm not going to give her full name because I don't want to be rude in case by chance someone who knows her hears this. Bobby Sue was not the sharpest knife in the drawer and never understood why I was called Bobby Lou. It's because you're Bobby Sue and I'm Bobby Lou. Just don't worry about it. Welcome back. So I became Bobby Lou, and it was probably 2 years later. I think I was listening to the Today programme on Radio 4 when someone said, "No, apparently he said on Twitter that he did." I went, "Is that thing?" Wait a minute. Oh my god! Wait a minute, haven't I got an account on there? Couldn't find it. Found some young. How do I find my account? I had 5,500 followers, and I'd written hello.
The cult leader speaks.
Yeah. And I didn't know what it was, because I think it said in the bio Scrapheap and Red Dwarf or something like that. So then I started using it, and then that was very odd. So that whole thing was all kind of tied in with that. So somehow, through the similar group of people, I heard about this thing called Patreon, and I knew someone I knew Pomplamoose, which was I'm trying to remember who it was. It's embarrassing, but Pomplamoose, a lovely band, a husband and wife team. She sings, he plays piano and guitar, and they did a nice song. It was on YouTube. It got like 6 million views, and people loved it, and it got amazing comments and amazing amount of likes, and they got nothing. And if that had been a record, they would be millionaires, in 10 years earlier. So he then set up I'm trying to remember his name. Is it Jack Conte? I think that's his name. Who set up
it might be, that sounds familiar. Patreon, yeah. So he set up Patreon so that you could give $2 to the people you like, whose video you liked, and I went, well, that's not going to work for us because we don't do music. It's not that. And then like a year later, I went, oh, all right, I'll try it, and that has been an amazing success story for us. So we're about 3,500 people donate between $2 and $10 a month towards keeping Fully Charged going, and you think that they don't get much for it. They get the show, but they don't need to do it. It's completely voluntary. I'm just staggered that but it spreads a message. I mean, if you were out there fracking and digging holes in the ground, it would be a harder sell, but I think spreading the message of electric vehicles.
I quite like to set up a Patreon account for individual frackers. It'd be horrifying if you suddenly wrote, "Oh my god, we've got £11 million a month."
Guess we better start drilling
because we're fracking in hippie households.
Right, I think that's it. There is the tangible goods of you feel part of the creation, and maybe they can't bring that conversation to light themselves. Yes. How do you keep the content fresh on such an aggressive schedule to release?
It's knackering, but I mean, it's not just me. So I mean, it's having other presenters, and that is really.
But it's all in the context of something to do with electric power or electric vehicles, or is it?
I mean, it's renewable, clean tech and renewable stuff. So I mean, Helen Chesky will very soon go to a big battery recycling centre in Germany, where the first generation of electric car batteries are being crushed up and the materials are being separated, and they show it to you in jars, and they recycle about 95% of the material in batteries.
Somebody was saying that we call it lithium ion. Actually, was Elon Musk saying in an interview, and he's like, the lithium's tiny amount, and the name that's called lithium ion.
And all the scare stories are, we're going to run out of lithium. Well, we're going to run out of steel. Way before that, rubber, plastic, all the other things that you put the cars are made of.
Presumably very timely, because if you're
and you can use it again. I mean, that's the thing. You can extract lithium, and it is it has not lithium doesn't go into something else. It can only be lithium. It's a whatever that is called,
inert, or
and then on the periodic table. An element. Sorry, it's an element. So you can't make lithium into something else, or whatever. It's just lithium. That's what it is.
Well, could it be interesting, you guys going over and tracking the building of the gigafactory is going to be built in Germany, isn't it? The next number 3, which I think my feeling on all these things is that they're so fascinating from the outside, but the understanding behind the scenes is misconstrued at best.
Yeah.
And to really know what goes on in the gigafactory, or how badly used or abused these battery cells are,
and what the materials that they're made from. Because I mean, that's the thing. They're not, the two elements that have been in the news: cobalt and lithium. There's enough lithium, and this is from minerals companies in the City of London, whose entire existence relies on them knowing the actual facts about how much mineral deposits there are. So not just they do everything. So they know how much copper there is, how much iron ore, all those things. Aluminium, all that stuff, and they do know how much lithium there is, and they said there's enough lithium for about 200 billion electric cars. There's no way we can make 200 billion electric cars. There's not enough other material for it. But lithium is such a tiny proportion of the mass of that vehicle. It's less than 1%. If you look at the whole vehicle, that that isn't the issue. There might be issues with extracting lithium and how you do it and how you do it responsibly and ethically, but it's in seawater, so 1% of seawater is lithium.
Well, they're talking about doing some silicon based or seawater based battery cells soon, and because the problem with the current ones is they form the sort of stalactites or the crystals that drive across from one anode to the cathode or stuff like that, and then they can short the battery in it.
I mean, it's certainly a danger, and it's far more a danger in small electronics. Cobalt is the kind of the most ethically challenging of the elements in a battery, which is, and the vast majority of cobalt on the planet's surface is in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Not very democratic, not a very nice place to be born in and be a kid that works in a mine. Absolutely out of order. But a laptop and a phone battery is between 10 and 40% cobalt to make it safe. A car battery is less than 1%. So, I mean, the thing is, a car battery is bigger, so it does use cobalt, but the first generation of zero cobalt batteries are just about hitting the market now, and I think that's the thing. You can't, the battery discussion, it's fascinating that's become the central discussion around electric vehicles. So people now, I don't hear I couldn't have one because I'd have range anxiety, because they've read in a magazine or on the Daily Mail or on a website that you'll have range anxiety. Everyone who drives an electric car has range anxiety the first time they drive it, because they've been told they'll have it. I did. I was terrified it was going to run out, and then second time I went, third time I've done it, I never think about it. I've never had range anxiety.
Your first electric car was
a Mitsubishi i-MiEV.
Okay.
Fabulous car. I just saw one actually on the street when I was on the bus. Yeah, there's still one on the road. There is Notting Hill. They were Japanese city cars, really good for London. Really narrow. They're very narrow. When you're in it, you're sort of.
How many seats they have?
4-seater, 4 doors, little hatchback, funny little thing. Not fast or anything.
That's that terrifying. What was it? Is it something Go or like
the G-Wiz?
The G-Wiz, yeah.
I mean, the i-MiEV was an actual car that had a safety rating. The G-Wiz was an egg box.
Yeah,
it was made out of the same material they make the egg boxes, and you're not quite as thick, and 4 wheels that looked like they'd come off. Because we filmed one, and I drove one on a rough kind of rubble car park in East London, because it had groovy graffiti on the wall, and we were trying to get a hipster groovy shot, and there was a lump of rock in that road that a kid would ride a tricycle over, and I went up to it in the G-Wiz and went, I couldn't get over it. So no, it was almost like the G-Wiz was designed by Jeremy Clarkson and Exxon to make sure no one ever wanted to go in electric vehicles, because they were diabolically bad. But I think someone has, and certainly there's plans to make one a dragster, so that they'll put a phenomenally powerful motor in it and big fat tyres, and if you make dragsters are really good with electric cars, because you only need a range of about a mile, and then you can do the race. But
it was a proper electric car, the first one you had.
Yeah, it was a proper. I mean, it would do 70 or 80 miles on a charge, and you had to charge it off a 3-pin plug, which I had in the garage. And
you're often described as the anti-Clarkson. How do you feel about that? And do you ever think that Fully Charged will move on to primetime TV, or is it you want to retain that autonomy?
I don't. I think I don't want to do. I think that's the advantage I have in some ways over a young person who's done YouTube and wants a career in television, which I totally understand, and it's not a criticism. I really don't need to do that. I've done that. I've done that for bloody decades. So I'm not, and also the thing that excites me about YouTube is its international flavour. Most of the people who watch it are overseas. And it really broadens you, because when I talk about something like batteries, solar panels on your roof. If you talk to an English audience, I know it's cloudy here, but they still work. I'm not talking to an English audience. I'm talking to people who are in Australia that have got way more solar panels on their roof than I'll ever have, and export electricity and make money. There's a whole huge difference in the market. So it gives you a very global perspective, which I think is hopeful when you're in a city or a country or a town with a very retro, like Australia at the moment. Their government is Stone Age, Coal Age. America has got a slightly questionable president, but what's going on in the cities in America is amazing. I mean, they're doing incredible. Austin is aiming to be 100% renewably powered by 2023.
It's amazing.
And they're close to it already because they've got so much wind, and they're putting in solar, and all their buses are electric, and the taxis are electric, and everyone's on scooters. There's a lot of man buns and tats on scooters. There's a lot of scooters.
It's so great you get to, as you say, discuss these ideas at scale, not just at a provincial.
That is the exciting thing about it. So in that sense, I wouldn't want to do anything. I'm not interested in trying to pursue a broadcasting. The one area we have made some attempts at is to do something like on Netflix or on Amazon TV or on Apple TV, to go to a different audience. And it's like, that would be, I think that's worth pursuing. And also it's
because the reason I asked is because we were discussing before we started recording about how it's gone from being a passion project to a business, and you have a team, and you have I think you're the CEO, but you have the guy.
I'm called the reluctant CEO.
Yes,
I've never wanted to be one.
But you have real commercial people doing
sales and stuff for the live shows,
shareholders, and so sometimes TV might then become out of your control because it's the
I mean, that's certainly a big part of it for me at my age, is the advantages of having editorial control over what we do outweigh the lack of funds. And I know the lack of funds is frustrating. It's not because we can't pay the people who work on it, but to do bigger projects that require a sort of upfront budget so that you can hire more people to do this, and you need consultants that you get in and you need to pay them. That is still out of our reach, and that's something I'm trying to do so we can do some sort of bigger one-off event type projects.
I quite like just one-on-one with you sitting opposite Jeremy Clarkson, just shooting the breeze for an hour.
A boxing match.
A
YouTube stream boxing match.
But I've always actually, because when I did the carpool with Stephen Fry, he talked about Jeremy Clarkson. I didn't ask him about him, but because he'd worked with him he'd been on QI a lot, and he said that every opinion that Jeremy's ever expressed in public is the most obnoxious, reactionary, childish, homophobic, racist load of bigotry ever, but he's funny. And I mean, I met him a few times. I certainly don't know him, but I have met him a few times at kind of BBC events, and I just remember laughing sort of at him, at his absurdity. This great big uncooked pudding face looming down, because he's a really tall bloke, I know that he's bald on top because I saw him bend over and he's got no hair there, which is really, it's just at the front. But no one can normally see because he's so tall. But and I can't bear anything he says, but he'll still make me laugh. And I think if we did do that, and I think it's very doubtful we ever will, I think we'd have a laugh, and I mean, I would not be averse to calling him out on this nonsense. But that's what's interesting about this technological shift we're seeing, is that he now accepts that cars are going to be electric, and he was vehemently opposed to them. And I think that's certainly the angle I take with sort of people who are passionate about cars. I've never been passionate one with the other. I've sometimes hated them, think they should all be banned, and sometimes want to drive a really fast one with a big engine. That in my history. But very good friends of mine, Chris Barry being a good example from Red Dwarf, is a passionate classic car lover, and he knows so much about them, and he rebuilds them himself, and he'll spend a day polishing his spark plugs and valve seatings, and he's got a beautiful collection of cars. He's got a lot of cars. I don't want those to go away. I want those people to carry on looking after those cars for 100 years, like we have steam trains now. Though it's amazing. It must be amazing for today a little kid who's grown up with iPads and phones and computer games to go to a steam train, which makes all this noise and smell and stuff coming out of it, and it moves along. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they go, we must split in half. I've got a feeling they'll be impressed, because I was blown away by steam trains as a kid, and I was a kid right at the tail end of commercially used, like actual steam trains being used as trains before.
But when you go into the Science Museum, they've got a lot of those old steam bubbles. But I think the lure as a kid is you look at it and you try and figure it out.
Work out how it works.
Nowadays, my issue with modern cars is you lift up the
there's nothing
bonnet.
There. It doesn't matter even if it's not electric. You just look at
it. It's not intuitive.
No. I mean, I rebuilt cars as a young man. I had a Morris 1000 van, which you might see in the museum now, and even then was quite old. But it was like Meccano. It was like you open the bonnet and there's the spark plugs, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the HT leads that come. Oh, that's the distributor there. That's the carburettor. That's where the petrol goes in. There's the tube that the petrol goes in. It was all incredibly obviously apparent. And to take that tube off, to unblock it, you did a screwdriver and you took it off. I mean, I could fix it, so I put a new gearbox and clutch in my van and put it back together, and I drove it. And that was at a moment when I got back in the van and put my foot on the clutch and went, oh, it's working. I've put it in gear. Oh, it works. I'm driving along. I know what's going on in that gearbox. Because I'd wrecked it. I'd smashed the gearbox up with just a load of bits of metal. So that stuff, I think, is a shame that kids. It's a really difficult one. That doesn't. It just doesn't. It's old technology. It doesn't exist anymore, really.
So onto electric cars. People talk about 2020 as an inflection point for the transition to electric vehicles, and people have been saying inflection point for quite a long time.
Yes.
And I think one of the biggest barriers is maybe the education piece, and given the scope that your audience now has, your channel has played a massive role and will continue to play a massive role in that education piece. I know, for example, at my company Elmo, we worked with you to do our EV suitability tool, and we just got unbelievable traction just through working with you on basically one email and a blog post. And I know a friend of mine, a company called Right Charge, is a comparison site for electric charge points. He featured in the Mad Remotes one episode for 20-second clip, and he's won loads of business from it.
Wow.
And so
that is extraordinary.
How do you view the role that you're playing in doing that?
It's slightly frightening, and I think I keep it at an emotional distance, because you can't get all snooty and go, do you know the impact of this show? Because I don't really know. A lot of stuff happens without my apparently I have been told about a lot of things. I'm quite good at forgetting. I think that's an age thing. But it is, I certainly know, Jordan Brompton, an amazing company, My Energy, who did the Zappy charger, and I went to see the very first one they installed, which he now tells me wasn't really working, but they didn't want to let me. There was really a proper little startup, 4 people. They're making these, and these are car chargers that will take, if you've got solar panels. And you're putting electricity out into the grid when you're not there in the daytime, and you've got an electric car plugged into that, it will take all that electricity and put it in the car. So you can set it so that it just uses excess solar that goes in the grid. As soon as the house wants it, it sends it into the house. So if you put the kettle on,
amazing,
it'll do that. It does it so seamlessly, and so we did that one episode about the Zappy charger, which was just like one of those things. It was very casual at the time. It transformed their business. There's now 70 people working for it. They've got a massive waiting list. They make hundreds of chargers. They're developing a whole lot of other technology that runs your house and communicates with it, which I've got in my house. I don't even know what it does. I know it's doing a lot of stuff, and all I check it now and then is if all the green lights are on the little box, it's all working, and if the middle one's red, that means, damn, the water heater's not communicating with it.
Because the education piece is important, because otherwise,
it's really important.
I think with a lot of these mysterious technologies, they sound great out of the box, but if you don't know the problems behind them and what challenges face consumer adoption, but you don't have the audience and the participants try and come in and solve those issues alongside you, with you. They just stand back and let you try and feed them the solutions, or let Elon Musk try and figure it out. And it needs you to go, it's good, but the charging points could be better because of this, that, and this. And then somebody goes, I didn't think I could participate in this conversation, but actually I can think of a solution to that. I mean, I think that one of the recent companies I've come across, Charge Fairy. I hope I've got the right thing. I think it is Charge Fairy. And so this is particularly for people who live in houses that don't have off-street parking, which is it's actually 39-point-something% of UK households don't have somewhere off the street to park. So you park in your car on the street, which is certainly what I did for many years. And I think it's called Charge Fairy. So you park your car there, you have an account with Charge Fairy. They
can log into an app that tells them how much you've got in your battery. If it's low, they come along at night with a trailer with a battery on it. They plug it into your car, charge your car up while you're asleep.
Doing it at night.
Yeah. And then they leave it, and they won't fill it. They'll put enough in so that they know how much you go, because they'll have algorithms that tell you how much you do. And if you want to fill it because you're going on a longer journey, you call them and they do that. And there'll be a set. I mean, it's such a brilliant thing because it's that there'll be a set amount per month that you pay, and you never have to go and plug your car in. You don't have to think about it. You just leave it wherever it is. It doesn't matter where it is parked either, because they can find it on the app. It's all those sort of things that have become possible with that tech, that combination of mobile tech and the Internet of Things, which I think is equally terrifying as it is useful. Because that's the one thing I'm absolutely convinced of. There is no such thing as a secure system. We all know that. And there's no such thing as privacy. So if you accept that, I just want to make sure there's no such thing as privacy in any direction, so that when I meet a policeman and I don't think I've done anything wrong, I know everything about him. I know where he lives, what his children are called, where he goes to school, what his education was. That would be a more equal society. That ain't going to happen. Listeners, that's not going to happen. But we really know who paid for Boris Johnson's holiday in the West Indies, because we all know everything. Then that would be fair.
Having had your background from the Red Dwarf and stuff like that, I mean, do you think sci-fi inspires the positions we should be taking on technology, because they've been musing over these topics for years, as you said, in the 80s. Brilliant. You had Terminator 2 followed in the early 90s, and they did try and challenge us on these concepts. I think at the time we thought, I know it doesn't sound very realistic to me, but with those out there ideas, we do need to kind of question privacy, charging, this, that, the other, theft. So do you think we should sort of lean into the sort of weird and wonderful questions and the sci-fi a little bit as well to try and inform our decisions of how we steer the technology?
So, and I mean, I think it is true that if you look at it over sort of a long historical period, that it is bizarre how strong an influence science fiction has had on science. Because quite often, if there's someone who is of a scientific bent and they're a kid and they watch Star Trek, and then 20 years later they work for a phone company, because there was a phone that went opened like that. I can't remember, it was a Star Trek 15 or something. Rubbish phone, but it flipped open like in Star Trek, and it was such an obvious follow-on. They've got that stuff, and I mean all that. iPads. Effectively, there were. Scotty had an iPad. He didn't, but he had something that was sort of vaguely like that, like an electronic slab that did something really clever on Star Trek, which was made in the 1960s. I mean, it's extraordinary. But I mean, I think that it's essential that it's a topic that people talk about, and I feel now I think I managed to keep up with technology quite well for my peers until I was about 60, and I have to admit that since then I've just gone, oh God, I can't remember another password, I can't set up another account in another can you do I now work with some very nice young people that sort of look out. I just can't, I think you do reach a point where you can't manage the data input anymore. It's just too much.
It's getting quicker as well, and
it's so quick. There's so much different things, I mean, that stuff is a little bit overwhelming. I think I've found that.
Well, that's a point to you both. Since 2015 and 2016, the electric car conversation has been speeding up. Drastically.
Incredible changes.
Did you find interest was a sort of tailwind of like, for instance, if discussions bubble up around the Cybertruck, do you suddenly get renewed wave of people kind of coming in and finding your channel?
Yes, and being, and the that's what's interesting, is the reservations change. So that initially it was all range anxiety, or there's nowhere to charge it, or
can't tow.
It can't tow. It's a very popular one. But also the batteries will only last. That was thanks to Mr. Clarkson. The batteries will only last 3 years. Then you literally have to throw them away. You literally drive your car to a dump, take the battery, and literally throw it, even though it's worth half the value of the bloody car, if not more, as if someone's going to throw that away. So that was a big thing, because he said you'll throw the batteries away after 3 years. So I'm driving a car now that's 10 years old with the batteries. It's perfectly fine. It's not,
really?
Yeah. The batteries will outlast the car. All the cars will fall to bits long before the batteries, and particularly the more recent generations of batteries. One, it's the battery chemistry, but it's the battery management software that has refined so much that those batteries are protected so well from stupid charging mistakes like I made on the first on my Leaf, which is you know, you wouldn't do it on a phone now, but effectively, the battery was full. I drove to the shop 4 miles away, drove back, plugged it back in.
Yeah.
It had 1 bar. It didn't even have 1 bar missing. It did not need to be charged, and that damages the battery. All the other things I've done, rapid charge is fine. Doesn't worry about that. But that was a mistake, and so I've lost a bar. You know, I've lost range on the battery in 72,000 miles. But I've driven 72,000 miles in it for very, very little. In terms of fuel costs, staggeringly little. You know.
And what about breakdown costs? Because, you know, a car that old, an ICE car that's that old and has done that many miles, tends to break down quite a lot.
There's not really. I mean, punctures. I've had 2 punctures. Brakes could fail. You know, all those things. Light bulbs could go in lights. All those things. Wipers. I've had a new rear wiper blade in that time, but that's it. No oil changes. No catalytic converter. Nothing. There isn't. Anything. The motor needs lubricating after 500,000 miles. And in the latest Teslas, after 1 million miles, the motor needs to have a full factory lubrication. Don't try and cheat. Go into take it in, and they'll do a proper lubrication of it, because it's 2 bearings. There's nothing to it. You know.
Aren't they talking about technology as well at the moment, where they're going to sort of have dual batteries, where one charges very quickly to give you access to, I don't know, 20% of your charge, really quick, and they can dump charge into that very quickly, and then the other one will be.
I've not heard that. That's
I think they're talking about Tesla buying a company that was
doing that.
And then they may be looking
the thing they're working on now, which I think is much more sensible, because I think that in reality, rapid charging is the mindset that we have now with liquid fuel. So you think, well, I just want to go, and it's done. Well, okay, so then what do you do? Then I drive around the corner and leave the car there for 5 hours doing nothing while I'm at work or while I'm shopping. Why don't you not stop there and go, why don't you go around the corner, plug it in, so it's charging slowly. In that 5 hours, you add 150 miles. You've not done anything. You've not waited for a second. I've never waited to charge an electric car. I refuse to wait. If there's any waiting involved, I won't do it. Because you plug it in and you go and do something else. You don't want to, you know, and that's so I think you want cars that charge, you know, relatively fast. And there are times when it's useful to be able to top it up very quickly on motorways, and that is definitely happening, and it's getting faster. So it's not that you don't have that, but the mindset you need to develop is, I'm driving to see Auntie Mary. There's a car park opposite, down around the corner from her apartment or whatever. You drive into there, you plug your car in, you leave it there for the 7 hours, 9 hours you're at Auntie Mary's, 5 hours, whatever it is. You're adding 40 miles an hour on a normal charger. So in 5 hours, you've filled the bloody tank again. You know, and you haven't waited. You've been doing something else. That's the important thing.
And also, I mean, the best example is it charges when you're asleep.
Yes.
If you're lucky enough.
To have someone to charge
at home. It's as convenient as your mobile phone. Driving to a petrol station is the most inconvenient you could do if you're driving somewhere.
It's very inconvenient. It's not going to, when you don't go to petrol stations. So on the rare occasions now when we've got a hire car, when we're on holiday or something, and you drive to a garage, like, oh my God, I've forgotten what this is like. There's a queue, and you've got to wait, and then you pull up, and then there's the smelly stuff, and it's that smell that is toxic. It's carcinogenic. The fumes that come off petrol are dangerous to human beings. I mean, you shouldn't breathe that shit in.
We imagine what city life would be without all those noxious chemicals. You forget just how horrible the streets of London can smell sometimes until you've been out.
We're particularly cursed because of diesel. This is I think is a legitimate reason for people to be sceptical about electric cars, because 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they were told how clean diesel was and how good diesel was, and they were encouraged to buy diesel cars by the Labour government. And you got tax breaks for buying a diesel car because they're cleaner. And that was deeply and profoundly wrong, and a brilliant piece of lobbying by the fossil fuel industry and the car manufacturers to go, oh, this is a clean diesel. The words clean should not be associated with coal, gas, or diesel or petrol. There's no such thing as clean coal or clean diesel.
I think also people have this belief that they may drive to Scotland in one trip. They think, I don't want to stop for half an hour. It's like, you're definitely going to stop for a food break. Don't make it sound. Nobody's going to do that in one sitting, ever.
How optimistic are you generally about combating climate change or reducing CO2?
I think I'm actually not in despair.
Okay.
But I'm not terribly optimistic. I'm on the tipping point, going, this could get really bad, and particularly with what's happened recently in Australia, because being married to an Australian and knowing when you see a fire, there's a fire in Peru or a hurricane. I've never been there. I don't know. It looks terrible. Or the tsunami. I've never been to those towns where the waves came. So it kind of was slightly removed. When you see a building and a road that you've driven down, and that you've got relatives that live not that far away. Yeah. And it's on fire and the whole bloody thing's burnt. It becomes very, very plausible. And we were looking at a house last year in Australia that we couldn't buy, but we were going, if we were going to buy one, and I was going to retire to Australia and just walk around in a pair of stained shorts swearing at children, that would be the house. That's gone. That's now a concrete slab with a chimney in it, and there's nothing left. And it was in the most stunning, beautiful rainforest. Yeah. I mean, that's bizarrely, that stuff grows back. I can't believe it. So the trees don't die when they're burnt to fuck, just blackened. Yeah. But they actually do come back. In a couple of years there'll be forest there again, which is extraordinary. But it was the house. It was a wooden kind of bungalow with a chimney. So the chimney and the concrete floor is still there. There's nothing left. 2 weeks after all the worst fires, there were some people who got burnt out and then flooded out. So the rains that came they had in one part of New South Wales they had over a month's worth of rain in an hour. So it just flooded everything. Everything was underwater, after all that suffering with the flood. But it's not climate change, mate, because we burn clean coal. The guy, Pillock, that is their Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, was on
holiday, wasn't he?
Oh, he was on holiday, yeah. He's I think finally he's been done in politically, I hope so. But he came into the Australian Parliament with a lump of coal to shout at the opposition who were saying we should install solar. He's going, what are you scared of? It's just coal. You've got coalophobia. What wasn't revealed at that time was that the coal company that gave him that lump of coal had spent hours varnishing that coal, because if you touch coal with your bare hands, it has toxic residue on it that can be poisonous. But it's fine.
Commercial interests afoot,
people who work in coal mines have gloves on, but he held it with his bare hand, so they varnished it.
So, are you optimistic in the electric transition? Is that?
Yeah, I think that will happen because I think it will make commercial sense. So, in terms of renewable energy and electrification of transport, and I really want to focus the attention not on cars but on buses and vans. Yeah, those things will go electric much faster than people's private cars. Buses, in particular, in London. I mean, you're already there. The post office, half the post office delivery vans in London are electric now. They will all be. That's going to happen in the next couple of years. Great. That you'll walk down a street in London, all the taxis, all the delivery vans, all the trucks and buses will be electric. Private cars will be petrol till I'm well past I've carked it, but there will be less and less of them. Yeah. The range of electric cars will improve. The battery technology will improve. The integration of electric cars into the grid. That's the next step. So I've just had a vehicle to grid unit fitted in my house.
Amazing.
And that means I can charge. If nothing else, you can explain this to people who are petrol heads, and they go, so I can charge at night on very cheap clean electricity from wind and nuclear, 5p less than that a kilowatt hour, and potentially, and this is legislation that's just gone through recently, you can sell that electricity at 6 o'clock at night when the wholesale price goes off the scale because of the demand, for 25p a kilowatt hour. So you buy 10 kilowatt hours at night, you sell 10 kilowatt hours a day, you make money. And obviously it's on a micro scale at that level, so you're not going to make that much. An individual's never going to make that much money. You have a company that's invested in a 5 gigawatt hour battery, and they buy 5 gigawatt hours in the night time for bugger all, and they sell 5 gigawatt for hundreds of thousands of pounds. That message has got through to big investors, to hedge funds, to people with billions of pounds to invest, and they're investing it like it's going out of style. And that stuff is growing at an exponential rate. It's phenomenal around the world, not just here.
I was chatting to Graham Cooper, who's the head of electric vehicles.
Graham's amazing.
Amazing. At the Move 2020 yesterday, and he was saying everyone's up in arms without really understanding it about. Electric cars they're gonna crash the grid, blah blah blah. And he's saying actually it's the conversion to all the new houses with electric heaters and all the old gas-powered houses going electric. That's where the real difficulty lies for the grid, and that's what they're really focusing on.
Yeah. Yes, it is interesting, isn't it? But that could be mitigated with electric cars integrated into that system. Because one of the other ones, which I always whenever anyone says something with confidence, I always totally believe them at that moment. So when people say to me, oh, if you use vehicle to grid, it's going to destroy your battery, you go, all right. Until you meet a battery scientist who go, oh, actually it makes them better. They actually function better if they're charged and discharged gently, which is what you're doing with a vehicle to grid. What hammers a battery is what Tesla advertise. You can go from 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. That literally shakes the battery.
And it's really interesting because it means that now energy companies are now becoming incredibly interested in electric vehicles, because the valuable energy companies, customers of the future are going to be the electric vehicle drivers.
And they're movable assets. So when you look at an electric vehicle as a mobile battery on wheels, it definitely changes your perception of them. And these integrated systems. I think the only issue with this is I feel a little shortchanged in the UK that we can't just say, well, you know, what we need to do is whack on a load of solar panels because we get 300 days of sunshine a year. Some places they're presumably going to absolutely nail it if you're in New Mexico or something.
Oh God! I mean, and the difference, what's happened in Australia? Australia's a very good example. Is the uptake of domestic solar has been phenomenal. Much you would be amazed if you drive around Australia now. You can do I Spy to see the house that doesn't have solar panels because they're that rare. You know, it's very unusual. But what that's done is, in the past, the coal industry was digging up coal, burning it in power stations, generating electricity, and their peak demand was the middle of the day. It's different to here because that's when people had air conditioning on. You know, that's when you'd use the most electricity. And now the peak demand is covered by, to a huge extent, covered by solar, because the solar maximum matches the demand maximum. So it's much better suited to solar in Australia than we are here, because often, you know, we would get the maximum solar in the middle of the day, but our maximum use is early evening. So and that we can't. And that's what batteries do, is they shift that possibility. But in Australia, it's it matches perfectly. You can see the demand curve on the grid fits in with the solar generation. So what that's done is mess up the traditional coal, because there's no demand for it. So they turn the coal power stations off. When they turn them off, they cool and stuff cracks. I didn't even know that. So then they have to close it down for 3 months to fix it. No one ever talks about that. How much subsidy burning coal companies that run coal burning plants are really technically frail and complex, like nuclear plants. If you turn them on and off, which is what they're having to do now because there's no demand, they get screwed up, they get messed up, and they have to. When you see the amount of time that a wind turbine is operating in its entire life, over say 25 or 30 years, I don't know what the percentage is, it's quite high. Then you see the amount of time that a coal burning power plant is, it's offline sometimes for a year or a year and a half, because it's had to be completely refurbished and all the pipes have cracked and they've got to weld them up and it's under enormous pressure. You know, all those things, that's never used in those arguments. So the unreliable intermittent power that we have is natural gas, coal and nuclear. The reliable stuff that is really, particularly in this country, offshore wind, is so extraordinarily monstrous. There's nowhere in the world that has more. We have the most of any country on earth of offshore wind, and the general public have no idea. They don't know. The other day it was 57% of all our electricity on a weekday was from wind. Wow. Which is extraordinary. Was that hurricane? Well, a hurricane's helpful. Yeah, it was actually just post the hurricane. During the hurricane they had to turn everything down because it's a bit too windy, but then they turn it back up. So like 50, 60 mile an hour wind, wallop. You know, but 80 miles an hour I think it gets a bit hairy. Yeah.
I'm certainly conscious that you've got to get across
I do have
town.
to go.
Yes, sorry.
Let's go
terribly sorry.
Just do the quick fire
for sure.
We like to end with some quick fire questions.
Yes. So, firstly, wherever you wanted to go with this one, a prediction for the future.
Oh Lord. Okay. I've got one because I've got a bit obsessed about it. The global population will start to reduce. There you go. Put that in your pipe.
Any time frames?
By the end of the century.
The second one is a startup book, resource or tool that you'd recommend.
Oh, I will. A podcast. Is it all right to advertise a podcast?
Yeah, you can do.
Kind of annoying.
No, that's right.
No, they're not, it's American.
Yeah,
so it's called How I Built This.
Yes.
Good. Oh, you know it.
No, we've heard it's exceptional.
All right. No, I think it is very good. Yeah, it's a PBS show, but it's a podcast as well. And it depends who it is, but some of them you just go, how did that man who made some biscuits sell his company for $800 million 10 years later. There's a lot of those stories.
It's like
they're not all like that, but there are those sort of things.
The lady who cultivated bee pollen and then someone helped to turn it into Burt's Bees, which
that's right, Burt's Bees, which is a multi-billion pound company.
It's probably worth a plug for the Fully Charged book, which
the Fully Charged book,
yes, please,
is a brilliant resource. Thank you.
And that's available.
It's available. It's on Amazon. It's doing rather well, actually. So
relatively recently.
Yeah. So that was a crowd-funded book. So a publisher I'd worked with a bit and done a few books with, Unbound. That do crowd-funded books. So by the time you've written a book and it is printed, you've sold 1,000 copies. So that pays for everything. So then you can you can go on from that. But they're very good. And we did the Fully Charged Guide to Electric Vehicles and Renewable Energy. I think I might have got it because the title changed so many times, and people like it. It's got a lot of Graham's written for it. So there's a lot of good people have written. Llewellyn McTurk, my hero, is a battery chemist. He knows how batteries work. So I love it when I see that on Twitter. Well, your fancy batteries won't last. And then Ewan is very Scottish. Actually, let me describe to you exactly how they do work and why they will work and why you're wrong. Here we go. 500 long string of tweets with immense, detailed knowledge of how batteries work.
This one, God knows if we need to help you out with this one. But if you could have dinner, if we could help arrange dinner with anybody that you could have dinner with them tonight, and sit down and have a good old chinwag, who would that be?
What, living or dead?
We will reanimate the dead. We can reanimate the dead.
I would quite like to meet Nikola Tesla.
Cool.
I think he'd be frightening. I'd like to be quite a big table, and he's quite a long way away from me, but I'd like to overhear what he's saying.
With his Tesla core just pointed at you ready. If he doesn't like what you're saying.
But also Edison. I'm fascinated by those dudes. Thomas Edison would be fascinating.
There threatened to be quite a good film about their back and forth in the ACT.
I watched it recently. It wasn't. It
threatened to be, but it apparently wasn't.
It wasn't totally clear. It didn't really. Having read about them, I knew more about them than the film portrayed. There was a lot of other, but it wasn't terrible. I've seen worse. I'm trying to think of someone else. Germaine Greer. I quite like Germaine Greer.
Who's that?
Germaine Greer wrote a book in the 70s called The Female Eunuch, sort of proto-feminist, but she varies. It depends on which day you get her. So an academic. She teaches at she did at Cambridge University, Australian. Really articulate, brilliant woman, amazing grasp of history, of not just history but the history of patriarchy, of feminism, has an amazing take on the world. And I've seen her talk at 3 occasions. 2 of them she was blisteringly brilliant. One of them she was just a mad old lady. So I think she varies, and you just go, what the fuck is she talking about? You might get her on a bad day, but it's worth Google Germaine Greer. I'll do the cooking though, because I quite like cooking.
Vegetables? Or
I might murder some animals for them if they really want to, but in front of them, on the table. I'll pack them up.
And the last one of my questions is the best advice you've given or received.
Best advice I received, without question, very much specifically to what we've been talking about with Fully Charged and Carpool and all that stuff, is from a man called Leo Laporte, who does a very long-running tech series, a podcast series called This Week in Tech, Twit. And I went to see him a couple of times, same age as me, similar kind of traditional TV broadcasting background, started doing podcasts from a spare bedroom way back, like 2004, but was a tech nerd, so knew how to do it all. And I went to see him, and he was a great guy, got on very well, and he just said, just keep putting them out, just keep putting them out. And that was that thing where at that stage I could make a thing like the pilot for Fully Charged, and I could put that out and 4,000 people watch it, and then it's gone because it's swept away in the kind of vast torrent of new things. So you do another one, and you do another one, and when you do that simple thing, it's not everyone knows it's not a genius, but I just thought you do that one thing and then that's it. But that's definitely not it. That's day one, and then you do the next one. So that's how we've gone from 5 subscribers to 650,000, is for being consistent, putting them out.
Keep doing it.
And you can really see it for those periods where we've legitimately, for whatever reason, moving offices, didn't have the stuff, haven't had it, whatever, and you don't put them out, you see everything, all the numbers drop. Our numbers are pretty consistent, and they're consistently kind of going up, but very slowly, but they're going up, and then you do that, and it just falls away. People, it's quite understandable. People forget. I forget the podcasts that I've loved that stopped being made. They're gone. I can't remember them, but.
Brilliant, I can't wait.
Well, it's been such fun to chat to you.
Thank you so much.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
We're big fans.
I will do my best.